Okay, so we discussed like a lot of interesting concepts yesterday, including um, the Puritan, who functions in this system of Lord of Illusions as the murderer of the world. His goal in life is to just destroy everybody and civilization and just be the last thing alive until he kills himself, essentially. Um, so this is an interesting concept, and it relates to Austin Osman Spare's Anathema of Zeus, which is essentially written from the perspective of a god, and the way that this god figure Zeus looks at people is very interesting to me, and it's the same way or very similar to how the Puritan looks at people in this system of of Illusions. There's a poem that I wrote called "The Tombworld of Ialtobaoth" that prefigures this kind of obsession with a name, and it's as this figure of the Puritan decides that his goal in life is to murder the world, he changes names. So the Puritan is this kind of figure that not only destroys all difference in a system, but destroys the possibility that the system would produce anything different unto absolute destruction of the system. So you have a this figure that just wants to do this for ego and reputation and name. There's another character in a book called The Carnival of Destruction called Jacob Harkender, um, which has a lot of amoral and straight up evil figures, but Harkender is the one that you kind of he may be arrogant, but he's useful in a certain way. Um, and each of these figures has their own telos or a heaven that they get after their death, and Harkender's is the only one that falls flat. Interestingly, Harkender is left in this state where um, he is alone on this in this world, this destroyed world after the planet is basically killed, and he is a alone with an angel and his nemesis. Um, so the ultimate telos of Harkender's efforts was this loneliness of name, and uh, it bespeaks a certain kind of fixation on reputation that always leads to a negative end. Um, People don't necessarily know why they're doing things that they do, and they don't understand what will happen once they play that game out to the end. And I thought Brian Stableford's treatment of this character was very very smart and brilliant, and and it's something that I've considered a lot because what is a name? What is your reputation? By the time you've lived to see it become something worthwhile, you as a person are no longer there. You're this figure that looms in the sky like a star, but it's not human, and it can't be related to as human because it's only a name, it's a reputation. So it shouldn't be human, is the point. And when humans get caught up in doing these things for their own name or for their own reputation, it leads them to a very lonely place if they can muster the energy to do that at all. And you have to be a little bit shallow, very shallow and narcissistic to do this, to consider it a worthwhile effort. Um, the poem that I would like to introduce today is called "The Tomb World of Ialtobaoth." So I had this. Ialtobaoth is not necessarily this figure that fits into this schema of doing things for a name, but he is the ruler of this Gnostic system, and he is a disgraced figure. So the god of this world in the Gnostic system is a demon that wanted to pretty much to do something that was like God, but for his own name. And we see that the Bible punishes this kind of Telos all the time. Babel is a perfect example. The God saw that the humans were getting a little too smart for their own good, and he topples their temple in order to set them back, and then he confuses tongues, so it becomes more difficult to communicate. So ultimately, doing something for a name is in almost every case, like, you can consider it worthless to any human telos or goal set. I will now read the poem, The Tombworld of Ialtobaoth. I am not especially good at speaking. I'm a good writer for a reason. I don't necessarily articulate myself well in speech, but I do articulate myself well in writing, so that's where I've focused my efforts. Whatever. This is called the Tombworld of Ialtobaoth. It's divided into three parts, a triptych. The first part is called The Birth of Death. The second part is called The Indifference Engine. And the third part is called The Death of the Person. So, The Birth of Death, Part 1. Another story never told. The Eden apple was replaced by a human heart throbbing amid the green leaves and the brown trunk of a third tree, the tree of pain, its branches reaching up to the ever-sunshine of the stars. In this universe, every change was death to the master of time. Part 2, The Indifference Engine. The tools of the master perform goodness for a voice that emanates from a name, punishing bundled difference with death. Part 3, The Death of the Person. The servants of Ialtobaoth became swords and sieves, the brutality of a hammer on glass, shattering themselves and their world into a map of borders, their eyes looking forward and never backward. The dead become seeds. Their souls became spirits of vengeance, honed to a spear point. While the great demon rules over his world of death alone, the survival of the last thing to die in this universe was a single name. That's it.